Maruf Raza is also joining us, our consultant editor. Maruf, we were just discussing with Srinjoy India's one China stand so far. There are those who are arguing against it, that India, taking a leaf from US's book, take a more strident stand against China. Is that likely?
Well, I don't know if it's likely or not, but I think it's about time India now takes a strong position on the subject, because for too long we have been held hostage to the Nehruvian legacy of not upsetting the Chinese. That did not stop the Chinese from attacking us in 1962. That has not stopped the Chinese from having an aggressive approach both towards Arunachal Pradesh and to Jammu and Kashmir. You might know that they do not give visas to people from Arunachal Pradesh who may be even going somewhere where China is involved with sporting arrangements. So quite clearly, China defies one India. Why should we not defy the one China policy? We should engage with Taiwan. It is a robust economy. In fact, China and Taiwan have extensive trade arrangements in excess of Taiwan's trade with China being ahead of $350 billion, whereas Taiwan's trade with the US is very high. Taiwan is the top country in the world for semiconductors, which are extremely important for all sorts of technology, from computers to making of automated cars and satellites. And TSMC, the company in Taiwan that China wants badly, makes 80% of the world's top-of-the-line semiconductors. Taiwan is very keen to engage with India because of their Buddhist population and want to make greater visits to India and investment in India in Buddhist shrines. We have for too long accommodated the Chinese aggressive posture, and then we complain that the Chinese are not doing the same for us. Why should they? China only respects you if you look them in the eye and take a stand. And here is a good opportunity to do that. To that extent, my hat's off to Nancy Palocy for looking China in the eye and going ahead and doing what she has done, and suddenly has called out China's bluff.
But Maruf, interestingly, already the US envoy has been summoned and told that US will be made to pay a price for this. What's that likely going to be?
Well, this is the normal ploy for all countries to express their displeasure, where the envoys are summoned. And in China's case, they call up envoys at unearthly hours of the night and make a crisis situation out of nothing. The Americans have already said that the Chinese are building up a crisis situation out of a routine visit. She is not officially the US presidential team. That is the US administration. She is a high-ranking politician and has made a visit on her personal accord. She has a mission to try and get the democratic values that America likes to promote, and Taiwan has, and she is supporting that, just like she had engaged in the past with His Highness the Dalai Lama. But now, if China wants to make the US pay, the only area that China can make the US pay is by pulling out its investments in the American market. China has huge foreign exchange investments there, which will hurt the American economy, and that is China's trump card. Now, whether they do it or not, the spillover effects will be on the world economy.
And that's not a good thing at all to happen in the midst of the war, with already words of depression perhaps settling in. We'll have to wait and see how the world economy has to suffer due to this. But do stay on with us, Maruf. Colonel Arson Singh is also joining us, an author. So, Colonel Singh, your understanding, and we're just discussing this, after China's taken the strident stand against China, as even Maruf was saying, look China in the eye and called out its bluff. Do you think India needs to also strengthen its policies towards China, take a strident step against it when it comes to Arunachal, when it comes to Jammu and Kashmir, when it comes to several such issues which have been long-standing problem, despite India backing China with its one China stand?
No, I totally agree with Maruf, sir. And even yesterday I had said that we had, we have given up all our diplomatic, cards, all, diplomatic leverages. You recognize Tibet as an autonomous part of China, or, you gave up the Taiwan card. And well, in confession or in the bargain, what has China given you? So that is one. The second point is, and please ponder over it, that I don't know who, why and how did we decide to give certificate to the, to the Communist Party of China that they are the real rulers of Taiwan. Between Tsar and Lenin, who told you to take the side of Lenin? At best, we could have been neutral. Between Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong, who told you to take the side of Mao Zedong? What prompted you? Was it any sense of morality?
Historically, we have heard.
Did you find Mao more democratic than Chiang Kai-shek, or was he more more accommodating than Chiang Kai-shek? So to this very formulation of one country and two systems, it is nonsense. It is nonsense. It is just a temporary ruse. Everybody knows that. Sooner or later, once it gobbles Taiwan, Taiwan will meet the same fate. I'll give you one simple example. You got a lot of people talk about human rights and all. Hey, you must be reading, in your own publication, sister publication. So and so going to Singapore for treatment. So and so leader going for Singapore. What are they going for? They are going for kidney transplant. Where are the kidneys coming from? They are coming from China. Who are these Chinese? These Chinese are the ones who are executed almost on a daily basis in China. So I don't know how we took this position where if you see from diplomatic point of view, geostrategic point of view, with the contemporary geopolitics, every way we have gone wrong as far as China is concerned. And look at that. Look at that. I mean, you don't have even the courtesy to call it India-Tibet border. As a result, what has happened, the general perception in India is that, across Ladakh and Arunachal, it is all Chinese villages and Chinese. This is the general perception. This is what you have done with yourself. So it's high time, if you are a competitor, what should I say?
So that's very interesting. So we'll have to wait and see if India is actually going to call out China's bluff. That's something that Nancy Palocy has done during her Taiwan visit. Listen into what she has to say. Thank you so much, Maruf, as well as Colonel Arsan Singh, for joining us with your inputs. Listen into Nancy Palocy.
Today, our delegation, of which I'm very proud, came to Taiwan to make unequivocally clear we will not abandon our commitment to Taiwan, and we are proud of our enduring friendship. The story of Taiwan is an inspiration to all freedom-loving people in the United States and around the world. Out of a crucible of challenge, you have forged a flourishing democracy, one of the freest in the world, proudly to be led by a woman president. And Taiwan has been an island of resilience in the world. Indeed, the people of Taiwan have proven to the world that with hope, courage, and determination, it is possible to build a peaceful and prosperous future, even in terms of the challenges you face. And now, more than ever, America's solidarity with Taiwan is crucial, and that is the message we are bringing here today.
Well, of course, the visit of Nancy Palocy in the last 25 years, she has been the highest U.S. official to have visited Taiwan. This is very, very significant because U.S. has sent out a very clear message that it will not abandon Taiwan. Nancy Palocy has said that in not so many words. So what really are the indications of that, and what does it really mean? Let me go across. Joining us live here on Times Now, Mr. Yasuhide Nakayama. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. You are the former Defense Minister of Japan, and the strategic questions for you are going to be very direct. First of all, your response on the significance of Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, and most significantly, what she had said, that U.S. will never abandon Taiwan. What's the message to China?
Yes, this time
the United States, Nancy Pelosi, Her Excellency visits Taiwan, it's very good because we as a Japan wants to make strong strengthening between Taiwan as a democratic nation. I believe that the United States has a superpower, and superpower country have to be in response to protect and to prove what is a democracy, what is the ties of the democratic country is. So Nancy Pelosi has to be expressed more strongly that they are the United States of America, is responsible for the democratic nations team, and also show the strong strengthening, and also how to use and control and manage the superpower is a very important thing in 21st century. And also there is one thing that we have to think about. What is that? This is ambiguity strategy towards Taiwan Strait, and also Communist China, and also free country Taiwan. So is there any one China policy still exist, or the US is going to change the policy of one China? So that is a big question after her visit to Taiwan.
Absolutely. In fact, Mr. Nakayama, China has said this, that it amounts to the United States violating Chinese sovereignty, as you are talking about the one China stand. Well, China has also placed restrictions on trade with Taiwan. How do you respond to these Chinese actions in addition to the military maneuvers that they are carrying out?
Yes, I think that China is going to plan after Nancy Pelosi's visit. They are going to start exercise of the weapons and their military capabilities. So Chinese PLA active and action is actually in fact to Japanese soil also. We have claimed to Chinese government that they are doing their exercise. Actually, they cross over our EEZ on the ocean, and especially our territory, Okinawa Prefecture government. There is Yonaguni Island. This is only 110 kilometers away from Taiwan. So we have to defend our nation and soil also. So their activity and exercise related regarding to their military action and also exercise is, I think it's very dangerous and also illegally active and exercise prospective from the United Nations rules. So I hope China will behave their attitude towards this Nancy Pelosi's visit. And also, since yesterday, Taiwan had lots of cyber attack from somebody, from we don't know, such a figure, where they are activate and also attacking Taiwan. So stop those cyber attack towards Taiwan immediately.
Well, since we are specifically discussing Japan as well, the Japanese government, of course, sir, has already expressed concern over the Chinese military maneuvers following the visit. In fact, during one of the earlier visits to Washington, the Japanese foreign minister had said that logic of brute force is rising in the Indo-Pacific. So what implications does this visit of Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan have for your nation, Japan?
Yes. Free, open Indo-Pacific concept is a very important concept which Abe administration showed to the world. And this geopolitically importance is very needed and crucial. So I hope that this time Nancy Pelosi's visit is not just showing. It's not the. I hope that it's not the performance of the United States one political movement. I want United States have to commit more, lean forward towards this free, open Indo-Pacific concept. Of course, the armed forces of the United States are really cooperating to Japanese self-defense forces, and we are only one strong security allies of the world. So I hope the
Absolutely.
U.S. More go forward to protect Taiwan and also all the nations around ASEAN and also free open Indo-Pacific region,
Right.
freedom nations. So the Nancy Pelosi's visit is very good for the democratic nations, but on the other hand, the really important agenda is what is the next move toward communist China, and what is the United States government is going to show us a more clear cut for how do they manage the one China policy. That is the question for all the allies and the friends country of freedom, to love freedom.
Well, in fact, do stay on with us, Mr. Nakayama. Let me go across to Maruf Raza also, who's still there with us. Maruf, that's very interesting. Mr. Nakayama and his understanding of how US must not just make these words, but also act upon these words. And that's going to be just as significant to see what happens in the days to come.
Yes, I was listening with great attention to what Mr. Nakayama had to say, because over the last several years, and I think great deal of credit must go to late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe for turning Japan away from its pacifist approach to a far more aggressive approach, which Japan historically has been capable of.
Yes.
And therefore, as Defense Minister of Japan, he speaks with both experience and a certain degree of understanding that many of us lack about what are Japan's capabilities. But let me bring out 3 or 4 quick points. Point 1, that Japan is one of the few countries that has been willing to stare China down. And this was some years ago. There was an argument that led to a military standoff over some islands in the Pacific, pieces of rock, as one magazine had argued, that could have led the two countries to war. These were the Senkaku Diaoyu Islands. And Japan put its fighters into play and pushed away the Chinese who were trying to muscle flex. 2, there is another country in Southeast Asia, and that is Vietnam, which again is in population terms about the size of Japan, and both of them about 1/10 of India's size. But both have been willing to stand up to the Chinese and stare them down and even give them a bloody nose, as Vietnam had given the Chinese in 1979. And thirdly, we feel that our foreign policy is about tiptoeing around issues, and we call that diplomacy. I have absolute abhorrence for that. Diplomacy or no diplomacy, you have to stand up and lay out your red lines and say, you cross this and we will not take it lightly. To some extent, the Modi government did it after the Galwan standoff, but the Galwan standoff in itself led to measured diplomatic responses, notwithstanding our military standing up to the Chinese. So we need to have a far more stronger approach to the Chinese. Please remember, historically, our approach to China has been colored by Nehru's vision.
Yes.
One was to have an agreement with the Chinese like the Panchsheel Agreement, which in its title in itself calls Tibet a region of China. The whole fighting with China about the Himalayan frontier is about the frontier with Tibet. And if you recognize Tibet as a region of China, then what are we fighting about? What are we challenging and contesting? The second thing is that the whole approach to Taiwan has been to humor the Chinese. We don't even have a consulate there which can issue visas to the Taiwanese who want to visit India and invest in India. And we are talking about taking a stand. Do you know, you look up the internet and you will find not more than a dozen countries in the world recognize Taiwan, though all of them seem to be doing trade with Taiwan, especially for semiconductors and other technology. Why is India shying away from recognizing Taiwan? Because China is going to contest Jammu and Kashmir. They're already sitting on 1/3 of Jammu and Kashmir. How much more do you want to see that China's intentions are not favorable towards India? You still want to have an ostrich-like approach? Then this is what the world will treat you as as a power in waiting, but a power in denial.
But that's very important. Maruf, do stay on with us. That's very important. In fact, let me raise some of these issues with Mr. Nakayama as well. What you have mentioned as we were discussing, Mr. Nakayama. Now, Japan has been part of the Quad along with India, United States and Australia. So how would you like to see India responding to the current situation vis-a-vis Taiwan? As we are just discussing with Maruf, India still follows the Nehruvian ideals, which are that of one China stand. That continues to be the stand of India. And I ask you this question because India follows this policy and we still don't recognize China as an independent country. Mr. Nakayama.
I think as a Japanese citizen, if you meet some friends from China, Beijing, and also in the same time, if you meet with a friend from Taiwan, from Taipei, and can you recognize which Chinese is from which China? So I think that 50 years ago, during the Cold War era, the policy makers and the thinkers made a decision, one China policy. But since then, it's 21st century. And what do you think about the judgment and the making policy 50 years ago? And compared to now, 1997, Hong Kong, going back to China, and Chinese government announced to the all over the world that China is going to become one state and two systems country.
Well,